Hello, this is Angie Cummings. This is our Facebook Live, and pretty excited to do this one. This is on the role of a sheriff, and this came about because every year I see a sheriff's name on a ballot, and I have no idea what a sheriff is versus what a police officer is. So we decided to do this and kind of go over the background of sheriffs, and what their jobs are, what their duties, and how they serve the community. And I'm very excited to have Patricia Rucker again here with us. And if you have any questions, just submit them. We also have some that other people have submitted, but she'll start by giving us a background on sheriffs and just interesting tidbits. So thank you very much and enjoy.
Thank you, Angie, and again, welcome all of you. Just to put it out there, I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form, but because just like you guys, I had questions of myself when I first got a chance to vote and hear what is a sheriff and why are they important and why do we elect them. I did research and actually had a constitutional lawyer and specialist come and do a workshop here in Charlestown, West Virginia several years ago. She was awesome. Her name is Chris Ann Hall. You can look her up. And that kind of started a lot of my information that I have, and I'll share with you what I know. So just to give you a little background, sheriff is definitely different than a police officer. So, and the way that it's different, a little bit of history. The position of sheriff has been around since the 11th century. It originated in England, and we, of course, we're a colony of England and have adopted it. There are sheriffs all over the United States, but not every single county, uses them. So what the sheriff is the chief law enforcement for a county in a state, and also the tax collector here in West Virginia. So in West Virginia, the sheriff is the main tax collector. That's his role. And for that reason, the sheriff is someone who does not necessarily have to be a police officer or even have any police experience. It's truly almost the job of an administrator. And his number one duty is to, have a budget and, collect the taxes and then, again, be the enforcer of the law. The sheriffs are considered part of the executive branch, and a lot of people don't realize that. It's a constitutional position. So it's not really someone who has to, try to think of the right way of saying this. His main job is to serve you, the constituents in the county, and protect your rights, protect your constitutional rights, not necessarily enforce laws of the county or the state or even the United States. His job is to make certain that your constitutional rights are protected. So that's a good beginning, and I'll keep going if you guys want me to.
So I guess one of the questions that we're looking at is the county sheriff. Where are they in rank with like state police versus the sheriff?
Okay, so great question. So unlike county sheriffs, which is constitutionally created, state police is actually created by the state. And the state, they have their loyalty to the people who hired them, which is the governor. And so they basically do his bidding, okay? But all police officers have to do an oath to follow the Constitution. But the county sheriff is different than the state police or municipal police because they don't have to do the bidding. They're not hired by the state. They're not hired by the county. They're not hired by a municipality. They're hired by the people who elect them, which is the county. And so therefore, it is an important distinction. One of the reasons for why folks should pay attention to why this is such an important election for us. We elect the county sheriff once every 4 years here in Jefferson County. If there's ever a time that you need a good constitutional sheriff, it is now. His job to protect our constitutional rights, no one else can do. So even if the federal government were to pass a law that, let's just say, takes away your freedom to practice your religion, it is your county sheriff that can say no.
That's insane.
And he can protect your right. And actually, the county sheriff is the only police body that can arrest the president of the United States, can arrest, they can arrest federal officers. They can, I mean, think about it. They can arrest a state legislator because his job and his role is to protect the constitutional rights of every single person, and his only responsibility is to the Constitution and to the citizens who elect him. And just so you know, there was a very famous Supreme Court case. I wrote it down because I knew I would forget the date. In 1997, Mack versus the U.S. And a lot of people have heard of Sheriff Richard Mack, and I have his book.
Wow.
Just wanted to show people.
Excellent.
So it's not that I remember this off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's great.
But Sheriff Mack sued the United States because there was Congress passed a law called the Brady Bill. Some of you may know it. Those of us who are my generation definitely remember it. And many people had trouble with that law. It really was, questionable as to its constitutionality. Well, Sheriff Mack said, I'm not enforcing it because that is violating people's Second Amendment rights. And he and several other sheriffs got together and actually sued the United States. Part of the reason for why that law was so problematic, it actually said in that legislation that was passed by Congress, it said not only does every law officer have to enforce that law, but that they could be arrested if they don't enforce that law, which really seemed over the top. And those who know the Constitution, those county sheriffs who knew the Constitution knew that's not right. They can't do that. So they did sue, and the Supreme Court actually agreed with them. And in that decision, one of the reasons I bring it up, Justice Scalia wrote the majority opinion in that decision, and may he rest in peace. And some of the quotes he said, I want to read to you guys. One of the things he said was states were not subject to federal direction, which is true. And people don't know that. Those who do not know the history of the United States, when the Constitution was created, it was created to guarantee the individual rights and the rights of the states, to limit the federal government from taking over those rights. And actually, a lot of state legislatures, they don't even understand that. I mean, we really do have a lot of power, and it's our job to keep the federal government in check. But then, in addition to that, the federal government may not compel the states to enact or enforce a federal regulatory program. So, again, a lot of people don't know that, and they feel that if the federal government passes a law, we have to follow it. We have no choice because it's the federal government. But that's actually not true. We do not have to. And many of the things that they do pass federally, the way that they get the states to follow it and to enforce it is because they tie it to some sort of money. And I'm afraid to say a lot of state legislators, a lot of governments, state governments are addicted to just receiving that money. But that's actually new. That did not happen previous to like the 1900s.
Oh, wow.
And it's one of the ways in which the federal government has grown and has encroached on the freedoms that we have by basically bribing. And but we do not have to follow, and they can't force us. One other quote that I want to read to you guys, sorry, one second, that I already mentioned that the sheriffs are part of the executive branch. Along with the president, the county sheriffs are the executors of the law and the Constitution. People think of them as, oh no, they have to do the bidding of whoever writes the law, and they just have to enforce the law. No, they actually don't. Their job is to, execute the law and protect our Constitution rights. That's their job. Okay. One of the things that I want to mention, so our nation was a grand experiment, and most other countries have gone a different direction. One of the things that made us unique is that thought that it's the individual that has the power, and we have lent some of that power to a government to be able to help us, enforce certain things or regulate certain things, because it's difficult for one person to be able to control, like people driving on the road, following, common sense things. But the power lies in us. It doesn't come from the state. Most other countries, it's the opposite. They think that the state has the power and they allow citizens to do certain things. But we have to remember that our country, and the reason it's so great is because we weren't created with that concept and that idea.
Wow, that's excellent. So you've mentioned a couple times the constitutional position, or it's a constitutional office. What exactly does that mean, that it is a constitutional position?
So that's a great question. So what that means is we have no choice to have a sheriff. We can't take it away.
So even big cities have sheriffs?
Counties.
County
County
okay.
sheriffs. So cities and counties are different. So the counties were first, even before states, and so counties are considered to actually be the first bodies of government.
Okay, wow.
And but so municipalities are not the same. And in West Virginia, municipalities actually were created by the state of West Virginia. They weren't here first. Although some places predate the state of West Virginia, and they're very proud of that. But the recognition and their powers came from the state. But when it comes to a constitutional position, you can't take it away. Like I, as a legislature, I cannot write a bill that says we no longer need county sheriffs or we're no longer going to elect county sheriff. I can't do that because it's actually part of the Constitution. And like I said, you all should be fighting to keep that position as it is and to not ever change it. And one of the worst things that could happen is if you make it an appointed position instead of an elected position, because then the loyalty is to the person who appointed. So, no, it's absolutely very important that we elect.
The way it is. Has anybody been pushing for it to be changed, or?
Well, so again, because folks don't understand the reason for it, some people think, well, why did we bother electing a county sheriff? It should be based on, him being a professional law officer and rising in ranks and his experience. But what you want to look for in a county sheriff is someone who knows the Constitution and is a good administrator, and you can trust him with their money.
So not necessarily have a background in law enforcement, but more just understanding the Constitution. That's excellent.
So that brings up a question that came in on the video, on the live video. Margot Davis asks, what are the qualifications to be a sheriff?
So in the state of West Virginia, because I can't speak to other states if they have different qualifications, state of West Virginia, there's not much qualifications. So I believe that you have to be over the age of 18. I don't know if there's anything else.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't even know if you need to have a high school degree. I think that you don't even have to have that. Well, maybe you have to have a high school degree, but you do not have to have a college degree. I think that's what it is. So there isn't very many qualifications, actually.
So it's pretty open to everybody.
To the best candidate. And of course, it's up to us, the people who elect that person, to determine. Like, if you really feel it's very important that they do have some law enforcement experience, then, you look for that candidate. But I have to tell you, there have been lots of good sheriffs that haven't had any of that background.
Excellent. Wow.
So what would, if you had to kind of make it a concise statement, what would the job description of a sheriff be?
Okay, well, so there's the ideal, which is his number one job and priority is to protect your constitutional rights. And of course, be honest, ethical, transparent in what he does, since he has such an important responsibility. The realistic, job expectations is that he be able to administer the office, that he can make a budget, that he can present himself well. He has to go up to the county commission every single year and request how much money he needs and justify it. Obviously, being someone who is a good communicator would help with things like that. But like I said, for myself, I would rather have an honest person who's a terrible communicator and is really going to fight for me than someone who isn't. So.
Although that brings in the county commission part, because I have no idea what they do either, but that might be another day. So
some of us in the area have experience with someone who was a volunteer deputy sheriff. So what What exactly is that?
Okay, well, that's a great question, and thank you, because I was going to mention something before I didn't. So, a volunteer deputy sheriff, so these are folks, they actually, I'm sure you've heard, like in the Old West, they would deputize people. Okay.
Oh,
So-
that's right.
The county sheriff is one of the few people that can actually raise a militia. So you hear about the Second Amendment, and they used to, that we have a right to have a militia, right? You've heard of that.
That's crazy.
That is the role of a county sheriff. If he needs, in order to maintain peace and order, to raise a militia and to ask citizens to come and help fight him, like a posse they call sometimes, he can do that. He has that authority, he has that ability, and it has happened in the past. And nowadays, there isn't much need for that, thankfully. We should all be glad. But
still.
he has the ability to call on citizens to help him do his job. And here in Jefferson County especially, they use volunteer deputies to be able to do certain things so that his law enforcement deputies can be doing, the hard jobs. Of breaking up crime and going after criminals and murderers and things like that. They use the volunteers to do other things that is also expected, like when they, what's the word? I'm just drawing a blank. They help out of funerals and they help direct traffic.
Oh, yeah.
The volunteer
Like
deputies.
escort?
Escort. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Draw
know
a
that's
blank.
what they were called.
But they provide that service. They provide help at the Jefferson County Fair. I'm sure you've seen them to just kind of maintain crowd
Parades,
control,
I think, too.
watch everything, parades.
Okay.
I see them out all the time, and they are volunteers. Although I believe that we do provide some benefits and insurance for them in case something were to happen, things like that. But
Do you get like a badge?
they do have. There is some official something. I don't even want to call it a badge. I'm not sure.
Some sort of insignia.
Yes, and a uniform. And
We know that.
one of the laws that came before us was to give them a right to carry a firearm, and I believe if they're trained, and they have to go through the exact same training that police officers if they want to carry a firearm. But like I said, if the sheriff needed people to help him, he has the ability to call on citizens to,
That's incredible.
and that's one of the reasons our Second Amendment law is there.
That is fascinating.
It is. And I have a question now that you said that there was a bill brought up about the volunteer deputies carrying. With constitutional carry in West Virginia, is that so that they can carry a firearm in their role?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because since they are performing an official role, it means we have to cover them insurance-wise, and we need to consider if we're going to cover them insurance-wise, we want them to have training and make certain they know how to handle. And one of the most dangerous things for volunteers in that capacity is knowing, when not to draw it, to be honest, and to protect it in case you're dealing with someone who might, try to grab it and things like
Especially
that.
the adrenaline rush.
So there's been some conversation on the Facebook Live, which is great, about the qualifications. And one of the things that has come up is that some people find it a little alarming that there are minimal qualifications. But can we talk for just a minute about why it's actually important that the qualifications not exclude lots of people, and why it's so important that it is an elected position?
Okay, well, that's a great question. And I will tell you that, again, so it was created in the Constitution. If you, the elected body, again, have a priority and you would like to see a sheriff that has, a lot more experience, for example, that's up to you. You can do it. But if you, first of all, you don't want to mess with the Constitution, not a good plan. And any qualifications you put in there, you might be eliminating someone who could do the job well and may be the best person for the job, and you're eliminating them just because of that one thing. So I'll give you an example of a non-constitutional position. So I'm a state senator, and in the West Virginia Constitution, it says that the senators have to be a certain age, I believe 37 and older. Well, there have been excellent delegates In West Virginia, we elected the youngest person ever to be a state legislator, and Sarah Blair. Many of you might know her. She was from the Eastern Panhandle, and she literally started running when she was 17, and she was 18 by the time that the election happened and served. But I mean, a very young 18-year-old. I can tell you, she did an excellent job. So you could make the argument, well, why to be a senator you have to be 37? If you have experience, you've been a delegate for 10 years, and you trust this person, why wouldn't you let them be a senator? But that's just one example of a limitation that some people could argue, well, it's good to have mature people in that position. Okay, but maturity doesn't necessarily make you a better legislator. So it's just one argument I'm putting out there. When it comes to the sheriff, I will tell you that there are those who might feel like, well, he should at least be a college graduate. Well, why does a college degree make you a better, tax collector or enforcer of the law? How does that make you someone who's more capable of being honest? So you can see where any discussion of adding an actual limitation like that, you have to understand, we as legislators, we debate all of these different things, and there's a side to every issue. But you personally, as the people who get to elect the sheriff, you really are the ones to determine what his qualifications should be. Because if someone runs and you don't feel they have the right qualifications, you don't vote for them.
Yeah,
it's the ultimate,
But how do you
power.
find out about who's running? Because I don't know anything. So
It's a great question, and gosh, when it comes to local, and this is a good time to talk about the local government, I can tell you that most people pay very little attention to the folks running for local government, and yet those are the ones that have a lot more power, much more influence in your life than the national.
And I don't pay attention to it, so I don't know.
And you're not the only one.
Yeah.
So in an ideal world, we would all read the newspapers, look online all the time, go to all of the forums and debates, but I know that doesn't really happen. This COVID-19 crisis that we have had has especially limited. In this primary, all of the forums that were planned had to be canceled. So there's been almost no opportunity for you guys to get to know who are the candidates running against each other in the primary. But one of the things that we have is the internet. So almost every candidate has a website, and you can read what they have to say about themselves, because that's what the website is. You can also, some of the forums have gone virtually, so you can look up if there's been any virtual forums. I know that the Tea Party here in Jefferson County, We the People of West Virginia, they had a sheriff's forum, and they did post it online, and I'm sure that you can find that, or someone,
So you type in Sheriff's Forum, Jefferson County, West Virginia. Is that how you search for it?
Probably you have to look up their organization, which is We the People West Virginia, and then you'll probably find a forum.
Okay.
But they did have a sheriff's forum. Fortunately, right before this, everything shut down. And then I think they had a school board forum also.
Oh, wow.
So they did at least get that in.
And that's where they get all the candidates to?
Well, the ones who chose to come.
To
of course,
attend.
they can't make candidates
Can't
show up.
force them?
Yes. Normally the radio stations, so believe it or not, we have radio stations, local radio stations.
I didn't know that.
And they have the candidates come usually one by one. And so WRNR is one of them. You can look up, they have a Facebook page, and they tell you who they have on, and you can see, okay, I want to learn, more about this candidate. You can look on their Facebook and see, okay, they were on this day, and they ask really good questions usually. There's also Eastern Panhandle Talk, same thing.
Wow. Okay.
The newspapers, both the local papers, the Journal and the Spirit of Jefferson, they do a candidate questionnaire that they send out to all of the candidates who have faced primaries, and that's probably going to be probably this week. You'll probably see it published, both of them. So that's a good source of information. You can also contact your candidates. So in West Virginia, we mandate that every single candidate have to disclose their phone number, address, their email. Yes, so that means you can find online. And you just go on the Jefferson County Clerk's website under elections, and you'll see every single candidate, has to put that up
So
there.
I could even go on the Jefferson County Clerk and see all the candidates but that's just for the ones who are elected, right?
No, all the candidates. So everybody
Wow.
who has filed to run for office has to fill out this form, and it's public. And so you can look it up, and you can get their phone number and call them up. And I get phone calls, and I always
Wow.
appreciate someone who has taken the time to actually want to find out my stance on issues. I think it's a great sign that they're an educated voter.
Wow, that's great. Impressive.
So this isn't really related to sheriffs, but someone noted that with the West Virginia age for senator being 37 is actually higher than the president,
Oh, wow.
which is 35.
Yeah.
So and this is just out of curiosity, how would one go about changing the age requirement for a state senator in West Virginia?
That's a good question.
So that can be changed through a constitutional amendment because it's in our West Virginia Constitution. And an amendment has to be approved by 2/3 of the Senate and 2/3 of the House, and then it goes directly to the voters at the very next election. And they have to decide, and 51% of the voters in West Virginia have to agree in order for it to become an amendment adopted to our Constitution. We did that recently with Amendment 1 in 2018,
Remember that?
and then I can tell you that we tried to add a couple amendments to our Constitution in this past legislative session, but it didn't make it through. And that's how you change any part of the West Virginia Constitution. And that reminds me, I was going to show you guys. So if you don't know your Constitution, please read it. I beg you, please. U.S. Constitution. It's very short. It's very easy to read. It's very common sense. The West Virginia Constitution, in comparison, is a book.
Oh my, I
So-
believe it.
And I welcome you to read it. You can find it online. So as a state legislator, I have to swear an oath to defend the U.S. Constitution and the West Virginia Constitution. So,
Which one takes precedence over the other?
well, see, so that's the reason for our county sheriff is different,
Oh.
because his loyalty is to the U.S. Constitution, not to the state.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yes, because he's a U.S. constitutionally created position.
Wow, that's
But-
fascinating.
For us, I mean, obviously the U.S. Constitution takes precedence, but I'm supposed to defend and keep within both.
Honor. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow. Excellent. Well, I know you prepared more for this. So is there anything we haven't asked you yet? Is there anything
Thank
you'd like
you.
to address?
There's one, I want to recommend this book. I mentioned Chris Ann Hall. So this is a really excellent book, and it's something that I believe, especially those who homeschool their children and they want to do a good job preparing their children for civics. This is a really excellent book. And like I said, Chris Ann Hall is online. She's got articles, excellent articles you can read. But if you really want to get to the nitty-gritty of understanding why is this important, she does such a great job. So I know I read the Constitution and I don't necessarily think, oh, this is a really important, right, because I just don't think that way. She explains why it's important and why it has to be this way and why you shouldn't mess with it, and just really helped me as a new citizen to this country to really understand why we have to defend the Constitution and why it should be. So I just want to recommend this very much. And I also want to urge everyone, so the primary is less than a month away, June 9th.
Oh, I didn't know that.
A lot of people are already voting through absentee ballot. You didn't know that?
I thought it was in November.
No, that's the general.
That's why I'm here, because I don't know anything.
So what the primary means, for those who don't know, it means like when Republicans have more than one candidate running for one position, or Democrats have more than one candidate running, and Independents, Libertarian, Green Party, they could also have different candidates running. When there are more than one candidates running for one position, you get to weed them out in the primary. So if you're a Republican, you get a Republican ballot. If you're a Democrat, you get a Democrat ballot. If you're an independent, you understand.
Yeah, I
Okay.
get that part I do.
But one of the things that folks really just need to take very seriously is those local offices. In a lot of the positions locally, there is competition. There's actually a choice between different candidates. And I can tell you, please do your scores, because it really does make a very big difference. To have, a lot of people, when they get to the general, they get frustrated because they have two choices and they don't like either.
Mhm.
Well, that's where the primary, that's where you can fix it and you can make certain you have a good candidate. And one thing I also want to let people know in terms of the primary, in West Virginia, what they call nonpartisan positions, positions that you don't have to declare whether you're Republican or Democrat or whatever party, they get elected here in the primary. So we're talking about all the judges and the school
Do
board
you know that, or
candidates.
is it just me?
No,
You didn't know
that one was news to me too. I didn't realize that.
So you elect them literally next month. That's when they get elected. And you want to talk about important positions. So your judges, they're the ones, if you get in trouble, you're in front of a magistrate or a judge. They get elected now. And the school board, those of us who are parents, and that's a lot of us, you want to talk about positions that have a lot of power, and especially. And
So that's also now.
right now,
Holy cow.
June 9th,
Okay.
they get elected. And I will take credit for this. In our education reform bill that we passed last year, I actually helped to empower school boards. So they actually do have real power now, and they're not
Nice.
just, rubber stamps. So it's really important we elect good school board members. And in Jefferson County, we have 3 to elect, just so you guys
Oh,
know.
wow, okay.
And we do have not just local judges and magistrates, we also have the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court of West Virginia, those terms are 12 years long.
Holy moly.
So
Wow,
very, very important. We
Long.
have 3 to elect this year in the Supreme
That's
Court.
huge.
And we only get 5 judges on the Supreme Court. So those 3
Wow.
are going to be a majority.
So, what is the difference between a magistrate and a judge?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that a different Facebook?
I know. We're moving on.
Since we're talking about it, actually, it's good we're talking about it because we only have a few weeks.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
So I will tell you. So the magistrate is the first level, I guess, in
So
the
you have to be
judicial
a judge,
system.
like you have to be a lawyer?
No, actually.
Also, no qualifications. That's nice. Interesting.
I can't say no qualifications, and I have not looked up the qualifications in quite a while.
Okay.
But I do know that high school degree, and
Okay.
you do not have to be a lawyer or have any law background.
For
For
magistrate.
magistrate, they will train you. And they have a very
Nice.
specific training they do for magistrates. And magistrates are the ones that you're going to face most likely in your life, most of us, if you ever get a traffic ticket. I mean, hopefully none of you do.
No, I haven't. But
I'm not saying anything about that. But so the magistrates are the first level. So small claims, you get in a fight with your neighbor, those type of things. That gets elected by county and by magisterial district. I'm sure you've heard magisterial district, that term.
I never heard of that.
Jefferson County is divided into 5 magisterial districts.
I had no idea.
Okay, so we have to have 1 per. So
Wow, okay.
actually, no, we don't. There's 5 magisterial districts, but we only have 3 magistrates. But we passed the bill this last session. I increased it to 4. I helped get that 1 more. So because we had so much.
Overloaded.
Yeah, we're overloaded. But anyways, so that's the first level. Then next comes circuit judge, and then there's a kind of intermediary family court judge, which handles certain cases.
Okay.
I can't get through, I can't remember if there's some circuit judge, if it goes all the way to Supreme Court. Sorry, it's just been a while since I looked at
I'm
it.
sorry, we didn't let you prepare for this.
Oh, I
one.
Yeah, and then this is all just the state judicial system. Then, of course, there's the federal system and federal courts, which are different, independent. It depends on whether you have violated a state law or federal.
I have one more completely unrelated question, but very timely. The absentee ballots. So at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, many of us went ahead and requested our absentee ballots, just in case we didn't know how this was going to play out. So those of us who do and have received our absentee ballots, can we now choose to not file the absentee ballot and vote in person?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
Yes,
So we're not bound to.
you're not. Just
Excellent.
because you requested, you can still vote on election day, show up there. Make sure you mention it to them, know, that I request an absentee ballot, but I didn't use it. I, myself, would rip it up and turn it in and show them.
But
I'm not
that's
using
exactly
it.
the point, though. Can't you vote twice then?
No,
I would
Absolutely
I
not.
might end up
No.
disqualifying both of my votes
No,
if I
Exactly.
do that.
but but they would track that down then?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
And
okay.
actually, you are legally not allowed to vote twice, and you could get in trouble. And the, Secretary of State, he's supposed to pursue those.
So
And
they have a way
That
of
would be
tracking
federal
it.
court.
Oh,
so you are not allowed to vote twice.
but if people who are, so there is a tracking system. to
There is a
make
tracking
sure-
system. Now, I will tell you, I can't be certain that they would track it on the day you vote. So if you forget that you mailed in your ballot and you show up, they
Yeah.
might let you vote, but they will figure it out, no matter what. They definitely will check that. One of the reasons for why it makes some people nervous that there be so many absentee ballots out there is that, the possibility that somebody can, take the ballot and fill it out for you. One of the things I urge you to do not sign that ballot until you're about to mail it, because it's the signature that they use to verify that it was you. So don't sign it ahead of time or anything like that, and just sign it if you're going to mail it, like right then and there. And without the signature, it's void. Just
Oh, wow.
we'll throw it out.
So you brought up the Mack case. Back to
yeah.
sheriffs. You brought up Sheriff Mack. Are there any other notable cases, notable issues with sheriffs that maybe you want to share with us?
Well, so I definitely am not an expert, like I said, on all of those things, but there have been definite cases in which the sheriff has fought back against federal encroachment. I don't know how else to really term it. Like, there was, and I'm not going to remember the date, but there was a time in which the federal, they had some sort of big drug case, and they tried to arrest a family that they had, they had built up a case against this family saying that they were drug dealers or some sort. And it turned out to be wrong. And they came into the jurisdiction of a county to arrest and to do a big sting. And they actually did this thing without talking to the county sheriff. And, they got into a lot of trouble. And that sheriff actually sued, and not after, he sued and won and went through all of that, that state, and I want to say it was Nevada, like they passed a law saying that any federal action in our state, you have to first get permission of the county sheriff before you are able to come into, and it was because of that,
Wow.
case, that what occurred. And, out of respect, I believe that most federal agencies will work cooperatively with the state
incredible.
law enforcement, but again, even county sheriffs themselves do not always understand that they have the power to say, no, you cannot. You will not come
That
here.
fascinates me, that amount of power that they have.
They do,
It's
a huge amount of power. And, one of the things that I think is important to note, that we, the people, like, it's our job to make certain that our elected officials know where the loyalty lies. I think a lot of the corruption and problems that come from government is because we are so busy living our lives, we don't watch, we don't have the time to watch, we don't have the time to know. But what happens then is that people take advantage of it, and it's part of human nature. It's one of the reasons I ran, because I didn't like what was going on, and I was very frustrated, and mostly I tried to fight from the outside, but then, as you all know, I decided to step in from the inside. Because I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess.
So, excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much for those who joined us, and hopefully we can do some more. Again, if you have any suggestions, I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying everything I'm learning because I know so little. So hopefully you are too. So keep me posted if there's any other subjects. Otherwise, we'll post some more out. But thank you very much, Patricia and Jessica. All right. Take care.